on the issue of Cheney, what do we have? An interesting fissure where Trump is now trying to use the Cheney support to try and win over Muslim and Arab American voters. Let's put this up there on the screen. This is a tweet, or truth, I guess you will call it. He says, Arab voters are very upset that Comrade Kamala Harris, the worst vice president in history of the United States, and a low IQ individual, is campaigning with dumb as a rock war hog Liz Cheney, who, like her father, the man that pushed Bush to ridiculously go to war in the Middle East, also wants to go to war with every Muslim country known to mankind. Remember, Liz Cheney lost her congressional seat by the largest margin in history for a sitting congressperson. If Kamala gets 4 more years, the Middle East will spend the next 4 decades going up in flames. Your kids will be off to war, maybe even a 3rd World War, something that will never happen with President Donald J. Trump in charge. For our country's sake and for our kids, vote Trump for peace. Now, this is the first time that I've seen something like that actually come out. And interestingly enough, it could be part of a real concerted strategy. Let's put B7, please, up on the screen, because this came out last night. And I was really interested in this. Quote, Trump holds edge with Arab Americans, according to a new Arab News YouGov poll. Some 45% of respondents said they are more likely to vote for Trump, while 43% that they would cast their ballot for Kamala Harris. Obviously, that's within the margin of error, and they have Jill Stein at a 6%, 2% say that they would decline to give their choice. But I think when you put those together, on top of some New York Times analysis, Krystal, that you found, this really does show that within swing voters and around this question of Cheney, that there actually could be some organic pushback in the Arab American community around this, and potentially enough to swing the state of Michigan.
Yeah, well, it's funny, Trump's truth there. I seem to recall last election cycle him campaigning quite happily with Liz Cheney. So, you know, for him, the only question that really matters at the end of the day is how you feel about Donald Trump.
That's very true.
Let's put B6 up on the screen, though, because this explains where this Truth Social came from. And, you know, why they are moving in this direction of trying to make some sort of appeal to the Arab American community and some sort of pivot on Gaza in particular. The Trump campaign's research, they write in this, found that up-for-grab voters were about 6 times as likely as other battleground state voters to be motivated by their views of Israel's war in Gaza. The campaign also found that undecided voters were less likely to be white than those in the battlegrounds overall and were likely to be black. About 25% of undecided voters are black, according to the Trump team. And these two things go together, because we've tracked that in the polling all along. African Americans have much higher support for Palestine, much lower support in general for the U.S. policy of unconditional support vis-a-vis Israel. And so, some of us have been warning all along that this was a massive risk for Democrats, not just among Arab American voters, but among a much broader coalition. And this is what the Trump team has picked up on, that and the fact you have a real, schism in the Democratic base, primarily, honestly, between Democratic elites and the rest of the party, just judging by the polling. And so they're trying to, signal some sort of empathy or some sort of support or some sort of contrast with the Democrats here to try to pull off as many voters as they possibly can. Will it be successful? I don't know. But for Democrats to be losing Arab Americans in the state of Michigan is just utterly it's disgraceful. They did it to themselves. She did it to herself. This is the issue we showed you previously, where she has the lowest approval rating from voters. And you have voters who desperately want to see her being different from Joe Biden. This is the issue where you can do it. So, yeah, when you look at the polls, there was a lot of conversation earlier in the cycle where it was like, oh, barely anybody even cares about Israel and Gaza. This is not that important to voters. It doesn't really matter where Kamala positions herself on this. But if it's important to a key group of swing voters in battleground states, then, yeah, guess what? It ends up mattering a lot. So, if she ends up losing, which I think is possible, because of her unconditional support for Biden's policy of supporting a genocide in the Gaza Strip, they only have themselves to blame for going down in flames, because the way she has consistently stood by that policy has been deeply disappointing and utterly disgraceful.
It's interesting, too, if you look further in that undecided research, they say that these people describe themselves as non-ideological, and then looking then at those issues that are going to push them the most. And they found that Gaza is one of those where, I mean, again, to be one that is 6 times as likely as other battleground state voters to be motivated by is pretty ridiculous, considering, I mean, Israel, Gaza, Middle East in general, usually at the bottom tier of most people's ranking if you look at the overall aggregate, even amongst young voters that we've seen before. But with this tiny slice and with the Arab Americans, we could be looking at a real thing. I mean, I'll be honest, I don't 100% understand it, but it's clearly a real phenomenon because, what is it? We have that mayor of the Muslim majority town, Hamtramck? I forget exactly the name, but the guy endorsed Trump. Apparently, Trump has an office that they opened there, which everybody in Michigan was like, why would you do this? But now I think we do know why, about their micro-targeting data for that. So it certainly is something. Now, again, like I said, the reason I don't particularly understand it is, if we're all being honest, like Trump, you know, definitely is a lot more pro-Israel than Kamala Harris.
No doubt about it. And his coalition is more consistently pro-Israel. So even if he's just a creature of, like, you know, his supporters and donor network, he's going to end up in a much more pro-Israel position. Yeah, so for example, we have Michael Tracy pulled this out. This is from a more recent, I think it was a town hall on Trump asked about Iran and nuclear facilities and whether Israel should be able to hit them. Let's take a listen.
They asked him, what do you think about Iran? Would you hit Iran? And he goes, as long as they don't hit the nuclear stuff. That's the thing you want to hit, right? I said, I think he's got that one wrong. Isn't that what you're supposed to hit? I mean, it's the biggest risk we have. Nuclear weapons, the power of nuclear weapons, the power of weaponry. You know, I rebuilt the entire military, jets, everything. I built it, including nuclear, and I hated to build the nuclear, but I got to know firsthand the power of that stuff, and I'll tell you what, we have to be totally prepared. We have to be absolutely prepared. But when they asked him that question, the answer should have been, hit the nuclear first and worry about the rest later.
All right, so if we're all being honest here about what exactly that looks like, I mean, it's one of those where I didn't really want to like put this woman down yesterday, but we played that video of what was it, the undecided Arab American voters, and she's like, I'm voting for Trump to punish Kamala Harris. And I was like, look, I understand that. Like, I'm not going to shame you, but if your ongoing concern is about that, I mean, Trump has shown literally no care whatsoever. Now, listen, you know, it's not my top priority, so whatever. But if that's your top priority, I don't get it, you know, in terms of what you're doing. Like, this is the most pro-Saudi, you know, like Gulf Arab Emirates state president in modern history. The Saudis in the Gulf have a real plan for Gaza. It's called they get to take it over and we get to fund it. I mean, if you support that, that's fine, you know, but I don't know. I don't understand. I don't know how you can be like the whole like genocide person and also vote for Donald Trump. Again, it's not my top priority, so it's not like something that keeps me up at night in terms of like, oh, how to agonize for my vote. But if it is, then, you know, that's just one of those where I find mystifying.
Yeah. No, it doesn't make any logical sense, bottom line. And he's consistently at this point been hitting Joe Biden from the right on him not doing enough to support Israel. Another example of that, this is B5. He got asked a question about exactly this issue, and he says Biden's trying to hold Bibi back. No evidence of that. He probably should be doing the opposite. Actually, let's take a listen to that.
Does the deficit part make peace easier or more difficult?
I think it makes it easier.
Why is that?
You're going to talk to Prime Minister Netanyahu about it?
He's called me, yes.
What was that conversation?
He's called me. I have not spoken. I'm going to speak to him probably now.
What are you going to tell him?
Well, look, he's doing a good job. Biden is trying to hold him back. Just so you understand, Biden is far superior to the VP. He's trying to hold him back, and they probably should be doing the opposite, actually. I'm glad that Bibi decided to do what he had to do, but it's moving along pretty good. Everything's moving along.
So there you go. As we pointed out yesterday, Saagar, you flagged this. Some 63% of Israelis prefer Donald Trump.
Want Trump to win.
One thing that I wanted to point out about the polling is there'd previously been a poll showing Jill Stein leading among, I believe it was Arab American voters in some of these swing states.
In Michigan, I think, yeah.
In several of the swing states.
Right.
So this polling is really dissonant from that, so just to put an asterisk there. But the other thing I saw recently, I don't know if you saw this, Saagar, that there's been 2 separate polls that have showed Jill Stein is now taking more from Donald Trump than from Kamala Harris.
Wow.
And if these survey results are correct, that would make some sense. Because if it's basically like Arab American voters have ruled out Kamala, and now they're deciding between the other options, Jill Stein being one of them and Trump being the other one, it makes some kind of sense. So just who knows if that's accurate, who knows if this poll is exactly accurate, but I think there's no doubt Kamala Harris has a massive issue with these voters. It's 100% of her own making. And then the only other thing I'll say is with regard to Jill Stein potentially taking more from Donald Trump, just you have to have some humility about how all of these things are going to work out. It was considered written in stone that she would be more detrimental to the Democrats. And, voters are more complex beings than they're often given credit for. And so, it may turn out to be the case that she's more of an issue for the Republicans than for Kamala Harris, which would be kind of wild.
Yeah, it would be crazy. How about she just gets to run and people can decide for themselves? How about that? I think that probably works out the best. So in general, when we think about all of this, I do think it is pretty interesting. Why don't we put the last one, B8, please, up on the screen? This was it says, the AP reported that 64% of Muslims nationwide supported Biden in 2020. 35% supported Trump. And in heavily Arab American counties in Michigan, voters went for Biden by a little less than 70%. So just to underscore what the flip of all of this would look like. I mean, there is an open question. How much of this is Gaza? I mean, how many of these people are voting for Trump because of the economy or for something like that? It's very possible, right? As they correctly point out, it's not just Muslim voters. You got a lot of Christians who are Arab American as well. They potentially could be voting on that. I mean, there's a lot of different reasons why people come to America and they vote. So the shift in that could be men, right? It could be cultural issues. There's a lot of different reasons for why people might shift in different directions. But nonetheless, it is certainly a major phenomenon. Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.